Thank you for joining us for new World Languages webinar presented in collaboration with Central States Languages for All. We're thrilled to have you with us today. As a part of a series of 4 webinars we're presenting alongside Central States, we're honored to have Josh LeGrave, Coordinator of Digital Media and Marketing for Central States, here with us to say a few words. Josh, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Central States, we are so happy that you could join us this evening for our second webinar in our partnership with World Languages around the theme of sustainability and the Global Sustainable Development Goals. We invite you to continue these conversations by joining us at our conference this March in Kansas City with the theme of Global Languages, Global Goals. Additionally, we encourage you to check out our other co-sponsored opportunity with World Languages in the form of the Central States World Languages Grant for Project-Based Learning in World Language Education. You can find more information about both of these items at centralstatesconference.org, and additionally, learn more information about all of these and other opportunities by following us on our social media. Most places we are found as CS Lang for All, including our brand new account on Blue Sky. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I'm so excited for us to get to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Josh. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our session, Integrating ESD Themes into World Language Curriculum. And I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Catherine Frenzel-Luke. She received her MA in Second Language Acquisition from the Friedrich Schiller University in Germany. Sorry for the pronunciation. She has taught German to all age groups and language levels. She also spent the last 6 years teaching at The Ohio State University, where she assisted the language program director as well as acting as peer coordinator. Catherine, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. All right, so I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out. I know, as I can see in the chat, for some of you it's really early, earlier, and for others it's really late. I myself, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, so I'm doing the 7 p.m. session here, so that's quite nice. All right, so for today's topic, I do want to encourage you, if you do have questions, please go ahead and post them in the Q&A section, and we can use the chat function to chat. But if you do have questions, please make sure to post them in the Q&A. And I do have a little bit of participation for you guys, so to make sure that we're all on the same page and no one is going to sleep on me here. All right, so what are we going to see today? We're going to look into differentiating between ESD themes and ESD goals, as that is something that we really want to have a look at first. And then after that, just a quick reminder, what are actually our ESD themes, right? So if we want to incorporate them into our classrooms, we kind of need to know what they are. And then third, we're going to look at some practical strategies that may or may not be a reminder. For some of you, it might be new. For others, it might be more of a, oh, hey, yeah, I can do that, right? And then I do have a couple of examples that I provided for you here today, using those strategies and the ESD themes on, how we can possibly and potentially include those into our classrooms. And then let's not forget about curriculum alignment. Although this was hard to separate because the examples kind of showcase how to do that already. So we're just going to take a quick sneak peek into that topic itself. And then, of course, I do want to make sure that we have lots of time for your questions, because that's one of the main reasons why we're here as well, right? All right, well, let's go ahead and jump on in. So we're going to talk about themes versus goals, and why are we doing this? And you can go ahead, go to the next slide. And so we do need to differentiate between the two, as I found in my research, that a lot of times instructors are not aware that there is a difference. So let's have a quick look. So if we're talking about our ESD themes, we are talking about specific topics, such as environmental protection, human rights, gender equality, sustainable consumption, just to mention a few. Now, A goal, though, on the other hand, is something that we want to do, right? We want to cultivate responsible citizens. We want to create informed or make informed choices. We want to have our students contribute to a sustainable society, right? So an example that I pulled out here is, if not yet, is that if we look at the goal being to educate students about the impacts of climate change, to empower them to reduce their carbon footprint, or another one would be to advocate for climate action. Those are three different goals, right? But they would all be under the umbrella theme of climate change. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here when we talk about these, as we will focus on the themes that then will lead to goals, if that makes sense. Now let's have a look at those goals. And here they are. And I'm not going to go much further into detail here. That is just a quick reminder that there are 17 ESD goals created by the UNESCO. If you would like more information on them, let me know. I'll be happy to share a couple of links with you on where to find more information. All right, now more important are our themes. So let's have a look at those. And so from the 17 goals that we have and were created for us, we can take 7 ESD themes for our classrooms. And I kind of put them in this little hexagon shape here. There's no particular order. And so I'm just going to go ahead and go through them a little bit by bit. And again, this is just some, theoretical bottom lines, things that I want to make sure that we use as a starting point before we look into our examples. So one thing that I'm particularly keen of is climate change. I'm a big proponent of climate change. But when we talk about the theme of climate change, we really are focusing on understanding the climate science or the impact that climate change has. And then we also might want to talk about some strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Now, another big topic is biodiversity. Sounds scary, but we can break it down. What we mean is preserving diverse ecosystem. Think of the Amazonas. Understanding the importance of biodiversity. Why is it so important? And promoting conservation efforts. And living in Columbus, Ohio, we do have, the Columbus Zoo, who's doing a lot on exactly that, conservation efforts for a diverse ecosystem in all parts of the country. And so that was really close to us. Another theme is sustainable consumption and production. And here, we should try to encourage our students to encouraging resourcing efficiency, reducing waste, right? Promoting responsible consumption and production patterns. Now, a really big topic, and the most challenging for me personally, is poverty reduction and social equity. That always goes near and dear to my heart. And here we kind of want to address inequality, right? We want to improve access to education and health. How can we incorporate that into our classrooms? And for our students, maybe creating opportunities for marginalized communities. So how do we take that theme into our classrooms to educate and encourage our students in those directions? Now, another one is cultural diversity and heritage. I know what y'all thinking. Perfect. And yes, I agree. This is wonderful theme for our language classroom, regardless of whatever language you are teaching. We do here under this theme, we would see promoting respect for different cultures, integrating indigenous knowledge and sustainability practices, right? So we're not just looking at cultural diversity and heritage, it all has to come together under the sustainability umbrella here. Sustainability cities and communities, a wonderful theme to tag on to when we are talking about cities, traveling, moving around, easily to do. It's to encourage urban development that is inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, right? Works extremely well. Now, health and well-being, We all love a good chapter on health. We all love a good chapter on going to the doctor, body parts, right? Great starting points for the topic of health and well-being, where we might want to include a focus on mental and physical health, but also clean water and sanitation, reducing pollution for better quality of life altogether. Now, I know point for discussion is gender equality. It is part of the global goals here. However, when I did my research about the UNESCO goal itself, they are actually more targeting empowering women and girls as part of a broader efforts towards equitable and sustainable development. I do understand that gender equality is a hot topic these days with our political environment emerging in whichever way it's going to go. And so I do want to point out that you as instructor are in charge, right? You can include that if you are in the position to do that safely, or if not, then you might just choose a different topic. Very easy. All right. I love a good water management topic, ensuring the sustainable use and conservation of our water resources. We can talk about the droughts in California, but also other parts of the countries and the world. Renewable energy is a big one, right? It's coming more and more. Here, the idea is to advocate for energy efficiency and also a shift to renewable energy sources and the reduce of dependence on fossil fuels, obviously. And then last but not least, peace and conflict resolution. I feel like this is even more crucial in our day and time right now to promote peace and justice and having a strong institutions as part of sustainable communities. But again, these are all a can do. You see what I did there? And never a must. All right. Whatever you feel is the most beneficial to you as instructor, because this comes down to what you feel comfortable teaching, but also to your overall framework, right? If your district does not allow certain topics or wants you to handle them in a different way, then we're a little restricted here. But again, your choice and your individual style will play a crucial role here. Alrighty, so what kind of strategies can we apply? And so if we go to the next slide, we're going to see that I have gathered here just a handful of strategies that I hope you might find beneficial in your teaching toolbox. They're really just to have, and some of these might just be a reminder as well. So, all right, so the first one is going to be thematic collaboration and conversations. And if we move to the next slide, thank you. We're going to see that when we're talking about including vocabulary and conversation around the ESD themes into our classrooms, we really mean introducing words and phrases related to sustainability, recycling, renewable energy, biodiversity, climate change, and so on. And yes, they are big words. However, if you do present them and and put them in context and have your learners learn in chunks, they're very easily usable as well. We might want to stimulate discussions around prompts such as what actions can individuals take to combat climate change in their community? Or how does your culture approach sustainability? Or how does another culture approach sustainability? So those are all options. And I always feel that the thematic approach here to introduce, I don't want to say just because it's a good bit of work, to introduce vocabulary and conversation around these themes is the least amount of work that we need in order to tag it on. That's from doing this and having used these in the classroom. I always felt like this was somewhat easier. All right, so next we're going to look at authentic materials. So what do I mean by that? We all know authentic materials, right? And we can use those that gather around those ESD themes, right? We can use news articles, videos, social media posts. Make sure you screen those ahead of time. We can follow some TikTokers, some activists if you want, but just keep in mind that we want to address sustainability issues. And so one example here would be for German, and yes, I know German is my language, my heart and soul. We might want to look at the current Energiewende, which really is an energy transition that Germany is undergoing right now. And we can do that by, looking at authentic texts. For Spanish, my Spanish teachers, you might want to discuss Latin American environmental activisms with interviews and documentaries. And again, pre-screening highly recommended here. Um, Another authentic materials are infographics, charts that we can find, reports on the ecological footprints, pollution statistic in the target language, and so on and so on. So lots of opportunity here, and it really is kind of like a pick and choose and an incorporating. And yes, you will not just use one strategy and then another. You will find that they all somewhat overlap and tie in nicely together. All right. Now, my favorite project-based learning, I also have to say the most time-consuming in preparation. I love a good project. And if we can find the time to organize collaborative projects for our students where we research sustainability practices in the country where the target language is spoken, where we create posters, presentations, videos, or we can advocate for eco-friendly practices in the target language. How cool is that? We might also want to develop a mock campaign, kind of like Safe Water in Berlin, and so on. So it's really, really nice if you think of this. However, project-based learning, if you do need to create it from scratch, does take a good bit of time in preparation beforehand. So make sure you think this through all the way. Okay, so really tightly in there are also cultural connections. Here we want to highlight sustainable practices specific to a target language's culture. We're already doing that if we're using authentic materials, right? We're already doing that if we are doing a project-based learning, for example. Um, the examples that I have here is, again, Germany's just on the tip of my tongue, I'm sorry, is the Germany's deposit refund system, right? It works so great. Did you know, by the way, that those aluminum cans need to be recycled and refunded in Germany? You pay money and you get it back. And so very different to what we experience here in the US oftentimes, or also Japan's mottainai philosophy, which really means just waste not, want not. And so we can discuss how historical modern culture practices align with those sustainability goals as well. And this is how we can draw those cultural connections. Now, let's not forget about role playing and simulations. I'm not the biggest fan of the term role playing as playtime. I always have to think of my 4-year-old. But let's think about role playing in a different sense of let's have a debate. Let's have students be a policymaker. Let's have them be scientists or activists and debate about sustainability issues. We could create simulations. I've been part of a large simulation a couple years ago that was a huge undertaking, extremely rewarding, humongous undertaking. I have never done one myself in the classroom. Would love to learn more. But simulations meaning that we are creating scenarios like organizing a zero waste event or responding to a natural disaster, like something that is larger than just a project. And here we have to negotiate, we have to problem solve, and everything in the target language. Again, extremely rewarding, but they do take a lot of time and effort. All right, now, not so much time and effort, maybe, depends. If we introduce our ESD themes to literature and media. Here I'm thinking about short stories, poems, novels that discuss human and environment interactions. There are plenty in every language. We can analyze environmental themes. We can watch documentaries or films that address sustainability and discuss their message. And again, this also ties in to the whole aspect of using authentic materials again and making those cross-cultural connections too. All right, we're almost there. So actionable classroom activities here, I do mean things like conducting a waste audit of the classroom materials and discuss alternatives in the language, target language. We all kind of do these actionable classroom activities where, when we talk about free time activities and we take a poll in the class, what do you like to do? I like to play basketball. What do you like to do? I like to play volleyball. And then, we do a tally. Those are all actionable classroom activities. Now, with regards to sustainability, another idea would be to plan a sustainable meal. Think about your food chapters when we talk about food, shopping, grocery shopping, cooking, baking, right? Why not planning a sustainable meal from a region where the target language is spoken and describe the ingredients and preparation stops? Maybe take it a step further. Think about from farm to table initiatives in the US as well to compare it to maybe where the food in different countries is coming from and how it gets to be there as well. So you can see you can take this as far as you want or keep it as short as needed. And last but not least, we do have critical thinking and problem solving as one of the strategies to incorporate those themes into our classrooms. Think of posing questions like, how does language influence the way we think about sustainability? What can we learn from indigenous terms, for example, or expressions about nature? I myself love a good language analysis. I love how the same idea is used in different terms in different languages and has different meanings once you use a different term in a different language. Love it. For me, English and German, and I still struggle. So that might also be something some of your students might actually be interested in. All right, now before we jump into our examples, and that's okay, I want to make sure that we take just a deep breath here, especially for me. And I would like to open the floor to you. If you do have any questions to anything that we talked about just now, please let me know in the chat. Not the chat, the Q&A function. Please use the Q&A function. And then I'll be happy to address a couple of these, and I can see them behind these global. Okay, so I have one from Ross. Without going too deep into the science research behind these global themes, how do you make these themes relevant to kids in the Midwest? Most students don't see the urgency and reason to become engaged. I agree. It's one of the biggest issues. I love to incorporate statistics, and also sometimes looking into the past as well. And so, to see where we came from and where this is heading. So I know it is tricky. I do feel though for the language classrooms, our students often love to explore the target culture or target cultures. If we think about Spanish, how many different Spanish speaking countries and cultures come along with that, exploring those and kind of like seeing the connection and how it's different might help. The urgency is unfortunately something that I honestly we're failing to begin with and largely at society. So maybe by bringing up these topics into classroom, that might help for them to learn a little bit more about that. And then Jane, oh, hi, Jane. Those thematic vocabulary questions are in the target language. So that is up to you. I would say really depending on the skill level of your students and what your goal is. If you want them to have a very deep discussion, more of like a reflection, and you are working with novice learners, you might want to refer back to their native language. If you're working with intermediate learners or like the novice high, you can absolutely do that in the target language as well. If you are talking, if the goal is more to have a conversation about these topics to kind of like get them thinking and get their mind going, then I would absolutely say target language. We are going to talk about literature here soon. That was another one. And are higher than the language proficiency. So, yes. So we're also going to talk about how to kind of address these themes for lower proficiency levels. And we're actually going to do that after my examples because some of the examples will target exactly that. All right. So Well, I'm going to close the Q&A. Those were really good questions, and we're going to move ahead with some examples. All right, so for our first example here today, and I chose the strategy to include thematic vocabulary and conversation. And the overall theme here is poverty reduction and social equity. And the target audience would be high school, even though this could also be at a middle school, but we don't really find novice, mid-novice, high learners at the middle school level. So we're right there in the high school. The duration of this example here, this lesson is for about 45 to 60 minutes. I would at least plan 60. And we're going into the Spanish-speaking world, and we are looking at, and there is a separation here. Oh, blew up too bad. One of the objectives is to understand how Mexico's Bienestar program has contributed to improving access to education. I do believe it used to be called Oportunidades or Prospera, but its new word is Bienestar for that. It's a government program. And the second objective here is to use basic Spanish vocabulary, right? We're going to go right back to the questions that we have and to talk about education, social programs, and social welfare. And of course, we want to practice reading and listening comprehension skills in Spanish. All right. So what are we going to do? So the topic here, or the overall topic or header for this lesson would be improving access to education, Mexico's Bienestar program. We're gonna start our lesson by introducing the theme, and then I have 4 activities that I would do with the students, and then I also have, whereas the 4th activity is more of a reflection and closure, and then the extension activity. Again, we're talking about a topic that is really easily added on to any chapter in your curriculum or textbook or your current teaching that talks about schools, school systems, and so on. All right, so how are we going to introduce the theme? I would suggest maybe just a group discussion or brainstorming. You can do that in the target language. Again, we're thinking novice, mid, novice, high, so they should be able to do that at this point. I'm not going to try to read the Spanish, I'm sorry. One question that we could discuss would be, what kind of things are important for having access to education, or that guarantees us access to education? The answers that we want to collect on the board here that we would anticipate are things like books and pens, right? And in the 21st century now, we're probably going to see computers, iPads, and iPhone. And we want to collect all of these on the board as well, and just kind of have a little bit of a vocabulary overview there of what they already come up with. And then also take a moment to just introduce the topic. Like, what is that Bienestar? What is the program? If you use simple language for your students, you might be able to easily do that in the target language, in this case here, Spanish. So we're moving effortlessly into our second activity, and here I would insert a reading and listening comprehension activity. We might, again, provide a brief explanation of the program if you haven't done that earlier. We might want to give students a simple reading passage about the program. There's lots of it available online. And then also have a few comprehension questions ready. Now, students should be able to discuss the answers maybe in pairs first and before they share it with the class. You could also turn this into a think, pair, share activity. I love a good think, as a student myself, always loved a good think, pair, share, because when I was called on, I was like starstruck. So think, pair, sharing would give me an opportunity to kind of like think through what I want to say. All right, so now that we've discussed or introduced a little reading and listening activity, we're going to go into speaking practice. And here I have the famous role play, but I thought this was really cute. We could have have students work in pairs or groups of 3, where one student would be a government official, and they would be explaining the Bienestar program to a family. And the other is a family member, or it could be 2 family members, mom and dad, or, auntie and grandma. And they are asking questions about how the program can help with school costs and education. Again, students will only be able to use what you have earlier provided because there's no research itself involved. So for this role play, make sure you do backwards design and think about what you expect and then build the vocabulary, the reading and listening comprehension based on that. I would also suggest providing prompts for the language as well and some structure for them to go along. All right, so we're moving into reflection and closure. Um, we started off with a brainstorming or class discussion, so we might want to finish off with that as well and bringing everyone back together. We can talk about what do you think of programs like Bannistar? How can they help education in other countries? Again, the novice higher level kids might be able to do this in the target language. And again, it depends on what your goal is. If it's a deep reflection, then and your goal is really to raise awareness and understanding, then it might be okay to switch back into English. However, if you don't want this like super deep reflection, then stay in the target language as much as you can. And then we're going to finish with a quick exit ticket. This should not take longer than a minute or two, where students write down one sentence or two about what they learned about improving access to education through social programs. And we'd finish off the session that way. Now, if you want to do more, or if you want to give your students homework, or they really caught on and they love this, happens, an extension would be to have your students research similar programs in the US, or since this was for Spanish, in other Spanish-speaking countries. And we have programs for this in German, we have programs for this in French. I'm sure there is some in the European world overall where you can find these. And then you can even move it along and draw some cultural comparisons and so on. So you see that this was just a 60-minute lesson that we tagged on to something that we're already teaching, but it could be so much more. It could also just be one or two things out of there. We could shorten this down to be a 30-minute thing. And it really depends on you and what you use. And yes, I do understand that some topics seem scary because when we look at the vocabulary, it seems so extensive and difficult. So that'll be on us to find pictures or ways to explain it to our students in easier terms that they understand, not only in their target language, but also in their native language, right? Or the other way around, not only in their native language, but also in their target language. I'm the kind of teacher I've always been trying to only use German in my classrooms from day one. My level 1 kids struggle the most, but they get it eventually. I'm really big in gestures and mimics and facial expressions. I'm not good with drawing, but these kind of things in images have really helped me as an instructor remain in the target language and encourage my kids and my students to do that as well. All right. Next. Okay, so we're talking about this. Your turn. Okay, I need a break. So I want you to share in the chat if you want to, what other topics or themes in your curriculum that you're already teaching offer opportunities for an extension to include the ESD themes, or have you done something like that already? I always believe into learning from the community, and if you're a one man or one woman show, one person show at your school, sometimes it's hard to have that community. So I'm gonna give you a few minutes here. I'm gonna look at the Q&As real quick as well as you type, and I'll try to monitor this too. And then Sabrina, could you let me know when 2 minutes are over? I don't want to go over 2 minutes here.
Sure, don't worry about it.
Okay, so there was one question about the exit tickets. Do students write in English or in Spanish? Again, that is up to you and your goal. And depending on the skill level of your students as well. So exit ticket, if you start your class in English because your learners might be on the lower skill level and you might want to finish, in the native language as well. If you start in the target language and your students can handle it and do well with that, you also might want to finish in the target language. I do believe though at the novice, mid-novice, high, you want to encourage them to write something in Spanish that they have come up with. In this case, in Spanish or overall in the target language. Okay. All right. Transportation, housing, food, yes. Shopping, local, cultural diversity. Ecotourism, I love that, yes. And fashion. Fashion is a great, I know these kids love to talk about fashion. There's a whole thing about sustainable fashion these days, absolutely. Soup kitchen, yes, my German teachers are here. Dominican Republic, service projects, absolutely, for the environment. Health and well-being, entertainment, perfect. I love those. Hadn't even thought about the soup kitchen. Transportation, Spanish for health courses, mindfulness, always a good topic. Global food insecurity, I love that. That goes right into climate change as well, how climate change and food security kind of go hand in hand, and as well as volunteer opportunities. I love that. Thank you guys so much for sharing. That was really, really good. All right. So let's talk about literature and media. So the second example that I brought with me today, I focused on the strategy of incorporating literature and media, focusing on media here. And the theme would be exploring environmental themes through literature and media. So again, at the high school level, I did pick intermediate learners, which has more to do with the literature pieces that I chose for this here. I would suggest to use at least 2, if not 3 sessions, for 45 minutes to 60 minutes each. And again, there's always ways to cut it down or expand it, of course. Now, our objectives here would be to understand and discuss environmental themes. In the target language, we're at the intermediate learner level, so this should be target language. We want to expand vocabulary related to nature, sustainability, environmental challenges, and we want to express opinions and interpret. Here we go. My cursor is doing all kinds of funny things. Interpretations of themes, all evolving around the present works that we can find. All right, how are we going to do that? So I created a step-by-step plan, if you wish. And this is somewhat how I actually plan my lessons, except that I use a lot more detail. All right, so we're going to look at the materials that we need. I have just some recommendations or suggestions for literary and media components, not much. Activities that, what to do with those. And then if you want to create a handout for these kind of strategies, a handout is often nice. And then if you want to assess it, also assessment. And note how in the previous section, I did not talk about assessment because I don't think that this should be assessed in itself as it's just part of a larger unit. Okay, whereas this would be maybe a little bit of a project in itself. All right, so when we're talking about materials here, and even at the intermediate level, I would still think about short literary excerpts, oh, I cannot say it, or poems, maybe. We can also consider short documentary clips or environmental themed films as well. And again, even though they're intermediate students, stick to like 5 to 10 minute segments of a particular film and kind of fill in the blanks and the rest. You might want to consider creating a handout with comprehension questions and maybe a vocabulary list, but we'll look into this in more detail. Okay, so we we know what we want to do. We kind of need a literary component, right? So for Spanish, my Spanish-speaking colleague said, "Good choice, Kathleen," and I was like, "Thank you, ChatGPT." We could use an excerpt from La Lluvia Amarilla by Julio, and I cannot say his last name, or poetry by Pablo Neruda, which is actually what I chose as we move ahead. For German, Stefan Zweig is very big with regards to environmentalism. Die Schachnovelle might be a good choice here. Or my German teacher all know that Erlkönig as a German native. I used to be able to cite that one as well. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, a pretty good one here. For French, you might want to look at excerpts from Clézio's Desert and or Victor Hugo's Saison des Pluies. And when it comes to media for Spanish, you might look into a film clip from Before the Flood, which I was told is available in Spanish. For my German speakers, I did not know that. Research taught me that 2040 Wir retten die Welt is actually available as a German dubbed version. And for my French teachers, the film Demain, Tomorrow might be a good choice here to take a couple of sections out. All right. Now, activities. Just like with every other piece of literature or movie that we'd be working with in class, we want to make sure to have activities before, during, and after us working with this particular piece. And so a couple of before working with the literary piece, activities could be just a vocabulary warm-up, with the matching or fill in the blanks activities. We could have students brainstorm, like what words do you associate with nature? We might want to teach them a couple of key phrases, especially if they're a part of the literary work or the film that we're about to see. We might want to discuss, how does nature affect our life? What is the importance of nature in our lives? And so on. And again, immediate level students should be able to do this in their target language. Now, during us viewing the film or working with the text, we might have students underline phrases that show a relationship between humans and nature. It kind of relates back to what we did before. I love this one to annotate the text with symbols. We could use, the earth symbol that shows for environmental themes, and we can use like an exclamation point to highlight warnings about human impact if we wish. And then we can also have watch the film and clip and answer comprehension questions, although you might also move this into afterwards. And then afterwards, have them compare students in small groups, how nature is portrayed in this text or film. There's discussion prompts that you could use. What responsibility do we have towards nature? None, I don't know. You may want to have a group debate. Can humans repair the damage caused to nature? I don't know. Again, role playing. Students can act as environmental advocates, presenting solutions to a town council, and so on. If you need students to have a little more writing practice, or in addition, or as homework, students could write a short paragraph on their vision for a sustainable future. And it really all depends on what literary excerpt or media you choose to work with, right? So we need to tailor it towards that. Okay. So I created a handful of and I did not. Canva helped me. If you are looking for a handout, I chose the Schachnovelle. I know it's very little. You are going to get the presentation, so you can have a look here. I chose for all of this to be in German. I did this instinctively without thinking about it. I should have put it in English. I apologize. However, I did put the excerpt from the Schachnovelle in here as well. I do have a little bit of a vocabulary list that definitely needs expanding. I have 2 reading comprehension questions here, and then as well as 2 activities. One would be a group discussion, and the second one would be a writing activity. The group discussion, since in the Schachnovelle, in this excerpt here, it's about the ocean, and so the question would be, how does the ocean symbolizes the relationship between humans and nature in this excerpt. And then for writing, I would ask my students to describe a place where they either feel free or begrenzt, which means, tied in. I don't know. There's no good translation for that. Now for Spanish, I did use and that's not the entire poem. It's really just this one little excerpt of Pablo Neruda's. And again, here we talk about water and the wave. We have comprehension questions. Yes, they are in Spanish. As well as two activities. One is a partner discussion, and the other one is, here we go, to create a creative writing piece. Kind of like following in the footsteps of Pablo Neruda, and have students create their own just little verse similar to the poem that they have found here, a little more creative. And then for French, I did pick an excerpt from Desert, and moving away from the water theme into the desert. Again, here our vocabulary list, comprehension questions, as well as two activities. Again, I chose like a group discussion, as I always feel like writing is something we do by ourselves. Um, and uh, and then we follow up by a writing task. All right. So let's talk about assessment. This is definitely something that we might want to assess. You might want to consider assessing students on their vocabulary usage in the written and spoken tasks if you were able to. You might want to identify and discuss their ability, assess their ability to identify and discuss themes from the literature and media, and maybe also their participation in group discussions and debates, so that, no one's kind of like honking out in the back. I am a big proponent of rubrics. If you want to learn more, come to our webinars on rubrics. And if you are wanting to assess your students on anything, please follow backwards design, create the rubric first, so you have the expectations set before students actually go in and do the work as well. All right, so your turn again. I know one question that I received earlier was, where do we find these literary pieces? Do I have recommendations? I do have a handful for German, not so much for Spanish, French, and any other language. So again, I'm going to count on you guys and the strong community that we as language educators have. If you would please share if you have used a piece of literature and or media in your classrooms that fit the ESD themes. If you would like to share the language that it is in, if you remember author and title, maybe the skill level that you used it with, and if possible, what theme it would relate to. And again, while you guys do that, I'm going to go have a look at the questions here as well. And I'm going to ask Sabrina again to give me the 2-minute topper.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have one question. Could you share the rubric for this activity? I have actually not created a rubric for this particular activity. There are some great tools that you can use. I'm also going to talk about artificial intelligence here soon. There are some good tools in what's it called? Magic Bus, I think, school Magic Bus. That's one I've been using a lot to sometimes create those rubrics that you can use. Don't shy away from AI. It's AI is going to be your friend, and I'm trying to get acquainted. So we're distant right now, but I'm getting more acquainted as well. All right, so let's look in the chat. Oh my goodness. That is true for my German teachers. Deutsche Welle does have really good resources for that. That's a really good place to start. I know Spanish. Country. right. Spanish poems, Spanish 2. All right, wonderful. Okay. And yeah, please feel free to continue to share whatever literature or media you use in your classrooms that fit the ESD themes. Again, I am a strong believer in the impact of the community, and I do believe we should all be helping each other out. All right, so third example. Sendung, I love the Sendung mit der Maus. I'm watching it with my 4-year-old daughter currently. Alrighty, so project-based learning. I love a good project. It certainly took me the longest to put this together. The overall theme here would be sustainable solutions, local actions, global impact. I did tailor this towards middle school students and novice learners. So I wanted to have an example from across the board, and I would suggest to calculate 1 to 2 weeks, really depending on how far or how much time you want to go. Now, the objectives here are to learn and use vocabulary related to sustainability. So very basic, right? Use simple phrases, and for the emphasis here is on simple to describe actions for environmental conservation. And then also compare and discuss sustainability practices in the learners community and language as well. All right, so how are we going to do that? Again, my step-by-step plan. I'm going to look at some vocabulary, classroom discussion prompts, and then we're going to dig into research and collaboration. The end product here will be a poster or a slide presentation, and we're going to look into how our peers could be giving peer feedback while these presentations are happening. And then we're also going to look at assessment, because this is definitely a project that is large enough to come with a formal kind of assessment. All right. So step 1, vocabulary introduction. We need a vocab list, right? So we can introduce core vocabulary, recycling, to protect biodiversity, climate change, and so on. One very simple activity would be for students to create flashcards or Quizlet sets with visuals. We are at the novice level, so I strongly encourage visuals. There's no reason why our novice learners should not learn how to say biodiversity in Spanish, French, or German, right? They can certainly say it in their native language. And we can use vocabulary games like Kahoot and Bingo to practice those. Now, the question is, how do we get to these vocabulary lists, right? Okay, so here's what I did. I asked ChatGPT, hey, I said, hey, create a vocabulary list for middle school novice learners project, sustainability around us in English. And here's what ChatGPT did. It did not look that nice. I put it in a nice little format. ChatGPT categorized those items for me already. So all my vocab items are here. And this is a really nice way of learning them because they're already grouped. And there's, different ways you can do that. I chose English so that we can all read them and understand. It's a good mixture of nouns, and there is a handful of verbs in there. Now, what I would be missing is adjectives. So I would probably have to redo my prompt here. Okay. But again, don't shy away from artificial intelligence. It's here to help in some cases. In some cases not, but in this case, it's quite nice. And that doesn't mean that you have to use all of these, right? You pick and choose the ones that you think you will need for the project to move on. All right, next. Or you use what you already have. So in one of our series, Reporter series, and here's the French version, Reporter Francophone 2, we already talk about recycling, and we already have a very nice visual of different vocabulary items. And then for the German classroom, and I know this is German 3 and 4, so this would be more into your intermediate. But we also talk about the environment, and we have a good bit of vocabulary that we can pull from. So use your resources, see what you already have. Now, for my Spanish teachers, you are in luck because they're potatoes too. We actually have a whole unit that focuses on this particular topic where we talk about Earth Day, and an entire unit that will have the vocabulary ready for you, so you don't even have to create a vocabulary list. And so that's very nice. All right, so we have our vocabulary. Now, what are we going to do with that? We're going to start with some simple scaffolded questions that build conversational skills, right? So what can you do for the environment? Do you recycle at home? What can you do to protect the environment? And again, those are all chunks and words that we can introduce. We are still at the novice level. Now here, I would strongly suggest a think, pair, share activity. So to allow students to kind of think this through first and then move on to discuss in smaller groups where they can help each other out. And then we're going to go into research and collaboration, and there's different ways of doing that. This can be a group activity, this can be an individual activity. The bottom point is that we would want our students to research. We want them to identify recycling programs or renewable energy or biodiversity initiatives in our community and in a community of the target language. So that's a lot of research. My colleague, as she was proofreading this for me, she actually suggested I would have my students individually pick one of these, whichever one they want, research it, come together as a group, and then compare what they found. I love it. Now, for language application, we want students to write a couple of sentences in the target language about their findings. Now, it is important here that we use vocabulary that we introduced and make sure that our students understand that that is what is expected, not them copy pasting from some online resource. Okay. Examples here on sentences we should expect are like, we recycle paper and plastic in our school, or in our community, we use reusable bags, and so on. And again, backwards design, think about the end result first before creating the vocabulary list. Okay. Now it is going to be time for our students to prepare their poster. It should include some local sustainability efforts in their community, sustainability practices in the target language, culture, and some simple solutions for improvement. So we want this to be threefold. Guidelines for content, they should include visuals. They can be photos, drawings, infographics, printouts, whatever they can find. And I'm going to top it up by writing 7 to 10 sentences in the target language. I would provide students or encourage students to use headers or headliners such as solutions for the future or ideas for climate change. Again, basic, simple language. It might involve biodiversity because they've just learned it, but why not? And then we're going to go into the part where students are presenting and giving peer feedback. So a couple of ideas that I have actually used in my classrooms is, when two people present and, 28 just sit there, it's nice for them to maybe write down a simple question that can be in their native language or the target language. Peers could fill out a grading rubric. Peers could also summarize what they've learned or found interesting of the presentation, and then they could reflect. At the novice level, reflection should always be in the native language because they are not equipped yet to do that. And so what I have here is one of the grading rubrics from our reporter series. They are the same for German, French, and Spanish, actually. And this is a grading rubric for a group presentation. So where a peer would fill this out. This is hold on, this is the self-assessment. Yes, so this is a yes, this is a self-reflecting rubric. My apologies. And then the next one. Yes, so this one is where peers would fill out the group's presentations and grade them. And you can see we are grading communication, product presentation. The written information on the poster is clear, or the poster includes expected content, see the checklist that they have received prior, and so on. All right. So assessment. Same. I love a rubric-based evaluation. We want to look into vocabulary usage, sentence accuracy, pronunciation, creativity, engagement in the discussion, and collaboration if you wish. Again, here I pulled a rubric from our reporter series that kind of goes along with what we just saw. This one's for the teacher specifically. And you can see that we've broken these down into different columns and lines here. So we're not just judging one thing. We have the instructions and the project, and we're also talking about presentational writing, communication and language, the product presentation, and so on. Important here, since it is at the novice level, if we look at language control, the use and practical memorization of grammatical structure is okay, right? If we look at spelling, most of the words are spelled correctly. Not all of them, because again, they're language babies, right? All right. So I wanted to show you a couple more things that if you have it, use what you got. If your curriculum already features a project, like in this case, the mini project on Earth Day that I was talking about earlier for our Spanish classes, it does come with a content checklist and an assessment rubric. So students will have a content checklist so they know what is expected. The teacher will have an expectation rubric so they know how to grade them and assess them as well. So this is all a given already. Next, please. Here's another example of what you can use as starting points from the materials you already have. In this case, this is from the environmental chapter in Klasse. And here in this picture, you see the kids working on school projects, and they are all related to the environment in one way or another. Students are asked or tasked to kind of figure out, oh, what could these be about, right? And then you take it from there, and then they could go into research. But you already have some form of vocabulary list because it's already there in the book for yourself. And another way to gather all this vocab is to just have students create their own mind map, right? Again, here, this is kind of actually part of the chapter where they would create their own mind map on the topic of environment, in this case, Umwelt. Next. All right. We're going to skip this because we're running a little short on time, and I want to leave some time for this last part, which is our curriculum alignment. And we already know and we already saw that all of these examples do align with the 5 C's as we can find them outlined in ACTFL. They are all real-world applications, contemporary issues. They all foster critical thinking and development. We can find cross-curricular connections, which goes straight into our connections theme. We do incorporate cultural contextualizations here as well. The thematic vocabulary and conversation would go straight into communication, project-based learning, comparisons and cultures. We are raising global awareness. And then don't forget about those 21st century skills of negotiating, debating. Those are all skills that your students will need in the workforce these days. So, you know, we already aligned by incorporating these themes into our word language classrooms. And I think we oftentimes just make it too hard on ourselves. Think small steps and then go from there. And even if you think, like, I'm always the teacher, is like, I want to do the big projects, which is great. But the reality is we don't have time. So taking small steps and going from there and taking your students consistently and continuously into these small steps to raising awareness of contemporary issues and foster critical thinking and global awareness, I think will do them really well. So I'm going to leave with this, a challenge, if you wish. Make your classroom a hub for change if you're up to it. And before we leave completely, I think I'm going to check the Q&A one more time. Yes, we were able to share that. That's just about the rubric. And I'm also going to have, if you have more questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. Sabrina's going to talk about a couple more things, and then we'll have time to answer those.
Perfect, Catherine. Thank you very much. So, as Catherine just said, we're gonna take the questions that we have. If you still have any, you have time, so please feel free to put them in the Q&A. And yes, first of all, we want to, before we actually move into the Q&A, feel free to share any feedback with us through the link that we're gonna put in the chat or scanning the QR code you have on the screen. And remember that you can also request a free sample for any of the materials that you've seen during the webinar. Also, we would really appreciate, please bear in mind that we have some upcoming webinars from this series that we've made with Central States. You can see the dates there at the screen. We have one on February 4th, also 6 p.m. Central Time. That is with Tyler William Johnson. And we have one with Diego Ojeda, which is going to be on April 29th. Now, that being said, let's go straight ahead with the questions before we continue with the rest of the messages. So I'm just going to take a quick second for that. And yes, so the first question that we have is if you have any advice on finding literature related to sustainability in our target language, and if you have any repositories or lists out there.
Honestly, use ChatGPT. It has been a huge help on narrowing this down. The more detailed you make the prompt, the more detail you will get out of ChatGPT. So if you are just looking for literature, just put literature in there and you can look for it and make sure that you have maybe the target language definitely in there in your prompt, and play around with a couple of prompts as well. It has been really nice for me so far, and I've been really enjoying the suggestions and recommendations I have received. Now, words that are important to add are contemporary, if you want something that is more 21st century, or if you're looking into something that is more of a classic, then make sure you kind of maybe you put a time frame in there, something like I'm looking for a poem about environmentalism from I don't know the 2000s and in German, and then go from there. But yeah, so that I think it's here to help us. It's not going to go away. Use AI to your advantage.
Perfect. Thank you. Then the next question we have is that, well, that sometimes these themes are higher than the language proficiency level of the students. And how do you think this can be tackled?
So that's the hard part being a language teacher because it's our I don't want to say responsibility, but I think it's our task to try to break these topics down into smaller pieces that they fit the language learners. So I don't want to call it spoon feeding, but especially if we're talking about climate change, right? We don't have to use all the scientific language. There's always an alternative synonym for it, and we can talk about it in simple words in a simple language. And honestly, when I do this, I always have I've been teaching 4 and 5-year-olds, and I always have the 4 and 5-year-olds in mind. I was like, and even in English, like, how would I explain this concept to a first grader or a toddler and use that language and apply it to my novice learners? And that has been tremendously helpful for me. But yes, I agree, it is a challenge. Pick and choose. Pick something that you find least intimidating and least challenging and start there.
Great. Thank you. And then another question that we have over here is regarding the exit ticket. So you have students write one sentence, and are you suggesting that this is in English or in Spanish?
And so that depends. Exit tickets can have different goals and be used at any level language skill. So if we're talking novice or on the lower end of the novice, then I would strongly suggest using the native language, just because an exit ticket is often a reflection and that lower level skill is better done in the native language. Now, if you just want the exit ticket to be a summary or them to reproduce something that they have used already, then they could absolutely do that in a target language. Anything that is like a novice high to intermediate should absolutely be able to do that in the target language, yes.
I guess this is it. Thank you very much again, Catherine, for that amazing webinar. And thank you all for joining us and being here tonight. If you have any questions or any suggestions or anything you like, Catherine just put her email in there. And you can also write us at marketing@colettewl.com. I'm putting that in the chat. Please feel free to send us an email if you have any questions. You can also send an email to Catherine. And please remember that we will send you the certificates, the slides, and the recording in about a week. Thank you very much and have an amazing rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for being here with me. And like Sabrina said, don't hesitate. Feel free to reach out. We're here for you.